Hello and welcome back to the podcast of Wednesday's Child. So we're going to have a theme to this episode. We're very much talking about maternal mental health, and that's because the release of this podcast episode comes during Maternal Mental Health Awareness Week. And many of you who listen to our podcast regularly will know that we've had quite a big focus over the last year, perhaps even 18 months, talking about perinatal health and the relationship with eating disorders. And our lead on that is Abi Reynolds, who many of you will have connected with online through her social media. So we're going to have a chat, Abi and I, today, just to talk about where maternal mental health is, what this means for eating disorders, your relationships with healthcare professionals, if you want to talk about eating disorders during a pregnancy, prior to pregnancy, once you've had your child, and all those kind of topics in between. So very much a sort of overview conversation, but what I really want this episode to be is a cause for those of you who have never previously reached out with issues about pregnancy and eating disorders to feel that actually, do you know what, this is a topic that is open for discussion. It is an area people talk about, and it jolly well ought to be, and that we, for one, are one platform and community that are very happy to share our stories with you and help and signpost as best we can. We've got, which we will come to discuss during this episode, we've got a lot of resources in place and a lot of education we're doing around this area. So this isn't something that should be brushed under the carpet, not by any stretch of the imagination. And if nothing else, we hope this episode will help you feel you can come forward and share your story and feel that there is some empathy out there in the community. So, hello there, Abi. That was rather a long preamble, but I hope that kind of sets the scene of how you feel kind of the perinatal mental health space is around eating disorders.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been kind of an exciting kind of 6 months, year, 18 months in terms of, really kind of diving into this work and really connecting with lots of women and their families and lots of healthcare professionals. And I suppose there does seem to be a kind of glimmers of hope and the a sense that this area is becoming, as you said, less something to kind of brush under the carpet or kind of avoid talking about, and there's a real thirst, I think, amongst healthcare professionals to start to really get an understanding of how pregnancy and the postnatal period can affect women's mental health with regards to food and exercise and body image, and vice versa. How eating disorders can affect pregnancy and beyond. So it's good to have a chance to chat with you and see where we're at, really.
So where are we at then, Abi? So, people will be able to listen back to the episode that we did some months ago now, which talked a little bit more about your specific story. And I would encourage people, we're not going to kind of go into that one too much depth, because people will know in our community, and obviously those that follow you on social media as well, you've shared your story quite widely. We've featured it on our blog and in our podcast in the past, but I'd really like to kind of go over with you where you think we were when we first started as Wednesday's Child, diving into this area and thinking, how big a problem is this? Are people really getting it? Are people understanding the issues about what it means to be pregnant with an eating disorder, or to recognize that you could be on the cusp of an eating disorder during pregnancy? Where were we? Where have we got to? And where do we need to be? That's kind of a long extended question there.
But, I mean, I think where we were was essentially me and a couple of other people I'd spoken to sort of saying, we experienced this, we had eating disorders during pregnancy, and we each individually thought we were the only person this had ever happened to, and we'd all encountered significant difficulties in accessing the right support or even just basic understanding of the challenges, and I essentially got a bit of a bee in my bonnet and thought, well, I'm going to dig into this, and because I don't believe I can really be the only woman this has affected. And it didn't take long to see that despite this blanket of silence, not just in sort of wider society, but really amongst healthcare professionals too, this sort of assumption that eating disorders in pregnancy aren't really a thing. Yeah, it didn't take long to realise that despite that, they really are a thing. And some research and a lot of conversations later, and you've got these statistics, that sort of 16% of pregnant women will have had an eating disorder, either currently or previously, and the relapse rate for those women, 50% of them are likely to relapse within a year of delivery of a child, because pregnancy and the postnatal period are such a hugely vulnerable and challenging time of life. And I think, it just became clear that actually there were going to need to be two strands to our work, really. One, of supporting these women who were bravely kind of coming forward as a kind of response to some others of us sharing our stories and sort of saying, actually, I struggled with this, or I'm pregnant and I thought I was recovered, but actually the old niggles are returning, and a lot of shame and a lot of, that actually it became clear quickly that there were a lot of women struggling with this, and that there simply wasn't the understanding amongst those whose care they were under to really help them feel confident that they were going to be able to navigate this journey.
So when you reached out to health visitors and midwives, what kind of response were you getting? Did you feel that in many ways there was almost a desire to say, no, we've got that covered, we completely understand it, no, there must be a misunderstanding, we're doing a really good job here as midwives and health visitors? Or actually, was it completely different? Was it about health visitors and midwives saying, do you know what, this is an area we really need support with?
Yeah, it was really interesting, and I suppose, the first strand of the work is supporting the women, but the second strand of the work, it became very clear that really we needed to be going in sort of at the coalface, at the educational level, and seeing if basically, if these maternity professionals were kind of up for hearing our experiences and our stories and the learning that comes from that. And I was very conscious that, I didn't want to be someone just going in and sort of telling a whole profession, no, you don't know anything about this, and I can tell you about it, because that's I wasn't about to teach grandmothers to suck eggs, and there would understandably, in my mind, have potentially been some sort of defensiveness, a sort of, actually, hang on, we're professionals, we know what we're doing, as you say. But actually, I can't think of a single organisation or perinatal individual who hasn't said, oh god, we need we need help with this. There is nothing, and we're getting more and more women all the time who need our support with this, or who we're worried about, or who we just, and there was so much fear, of really, even specialist perinatal mental health professionals saying we're scared of dealing with women with eating disorders. We just think we're going to do more harm than good.
So scared of what, Abby? Scared of what's the dialogue? How do I do that narrative to empathetically support someone? Was that the fear? It was about what to say and how
it was what to say, what not to say, how not to make things worse. And I just thought, actually, I felt my heart really goes out to these people who have dedicated their lives to kind of working with women during this time, and actually there's a whole area of it where they think, actually, it's not even about that I don't know enough to offer them specialist help. I don't even know enough to be sure that I'm not going to do more harm than good, and I just thought that's where we need to come in. It's not about giving them really sort of high level credentials in this. It's about saying, actually, you can make a difference, and it just takes some sensitivity and some confidence to really feel that. It's asking relevant questions. I mean, for me, that's one of the key areas of what I deliver with healthcare professionals, and which I get the most feedback from, is having these discussions with them about what questions are actually going to, without putting a woman under pressure, are going to enable her to feel able to share the concerns and struggles that she may be dealing with. Because there are a lot of really well documented barriers that a pregnant woman will face during that time, in sharing with their healthcare professional that they have an eating disorder, and that ranges from kind of stigma, fear of being dismissed, fear of being deemed to be an unfit mum, but actually a key one of them is lack of professional inquiry. So professionals just not asking the questions. And actually it takes an awful lot when you're feeling, as I did, deeply ashamed and scared that I somehow was not managing to kind of do this basic thing of nourishing my baby, to actually just, from cold to just say to a healthcare professional, I think I've got an eating disorder, or I used to have an eating disorder and I thought it was better, but actually I find myself doing X, Y, or Z behavior again, or, that's a big ask. Whereas actually to have opening these lines of communication and actually asking direct, nuanced questions, whatever.
Give me some of those questions, that for you, when you talk to those professionals now, that you're saying, here are the opening questions, here are the very things that can allow that person to feel more
like, how do you really feel about gaining weight in pregnancy, or how are you managing to navigate kind of morning sickness or cravings? What thoughts and feelings come up for you when you eat at the moment? How able do you feel to kind of rest when your body needs it? How much movement are you doing in a day? Are there any kind of food related habits or behaviors that you're maybe keeping from your partner, or that you're feeling a lot of guilt or shame about? Just in the kind of questionnaire you get asked when you kind of have your first appointment with a midwife, you get asked so that you do quite a full family history and things about your health, and there's only 2 questions that are at all relevant to kind of food or exercise, and one is, do you know the benefits of exercise during pregnancy, and the other is, do you know what healthy eating means? Now do you know the benefits of exercise during pregnancy is an incredibly biased question. It's for some, I personally had a really severe exercise compulsion, not just in pregnancy, but throughout my illness. And, for me, did I know the benefits of exercise during pregnancy? Well, I'd have ticked all their boxes. Of course I did. Of course I know it's important to stay healthy and la la la. But actually it didn't help me in that moment go, but I can't stop exercising. I can't stop doing it. And yeah, similarly with, do you know what healthy eating means? Well, for most people, of course they could tell a midwife, well, yeah, it means, whatever, having a balanced diet or, whatever, but actually it's not asking somebody whether they're able to really honor that, and I think
that's the problem, isn't it, with the tick sheet approach.
If you don't ask, you won't find out. That is the reality, because there is still so much stigma and unfortunately so much shame, or the feelings of shame amongst people struggling. Unless you're actually opening those lines of communication as a professional, you're very likely not to really allow a woman to express those concerns. And it's also the idea that things change very quickly during pregnancy, not just your body, which obviously does experience rapid changes, but for many women, they might be fine in the first trimester. If they've, say, previously recovered from an eating disorder, they might think, yeah, great, I'm going to keep eating, it's going to be fine. And then something might come along, I don't know, a bit severe, like an extreme craving or heartburn, or just something seemingly quite small, which might trigger something else. Or something, cravings, you're thinking, oh, actually, that was one of my previous binge foods, or if you're kind of finding yourself being sick, or you're thinking, oh, this feels familiar. And actually it's checking in with women throughout the period, that pregnancy and that year after birth, because you might tick the box when you're 6 weeks pregnant and you say, oh yeah, actually I'm managing to eat healthily, and then a few months in you're thinking, actually all these changes to my sort of the way my body is feeling has thrown up all sorts of things again. But actually, if no one's bothering to ask you think, oh, they still assume I'm fine, I better not rock the boat, or they might think I'm whatever, like failing as a mother. So
fear of judgment.
Yeah, exactly, the fear of judgment.
people that listen to this will know I don't have children. I can only bring to this some of the kind of insights and experiences that people write in and feel able to tell us about now, because we've kind of exposed that thing and you shared your story so widely, and we have got, you know, the perinatal work going on. One of the things that it really strikes me with some of the stuff I've heard and anecdotally via sort of friends that have had children is also the comparative nature of going through a pregnancy. We fling women together, don't we, in kind of, you know, groups that you go to that help you navigate your pregnancy. And then after birth, like, we fling women together and we expect them all to go to the same coffee mornings together, generalizations, but, you know, we expect them to attend the same nurseries or groups and go through those socialization experiences.
You bump into the same faces a lot.
So you know, if you are bumping into those people and you're caught up in rhetoric which is about, well, you know, my health visitor has said I've got to cut this out because I might get gestational diabetes, or I'm really conscious, oh my god, did I put the weight on, I better do this. You and I talk, and with Sarah on the podcast as well, all the time, like, even aside from the perinatal work, about that being surrounded by dialogue and that culture of people talking about weight. Do you sense that actually, again, that's another area that even someone who's never been through an eating disorder before suddenly becomes very aware of, oh my god, Mary Joan has gained far less weight than I have, or she's sprung back to her figure really quickly, and she talks about going to the gym 4 times and she only had the baby last week, oh my god.
Exactly, absolutely. And you know, for me, I developed my eating disorder after my first son was born. And I do honestly think that, you know, obviously there's unique circumstances to each kind of the development of these illnesses. But part of it for me was I was really aware that I had gained quite a lot of weight in pregnancy, and that I can really remember a specific conversation I had with a few friends who I thought we were all kind of quite similarly minded. And I remember one of them just saying, Hannah told me the best way to lose the baby weight is to, I won't kind of detail it, but to do X, Y, or Z at lunchtime for 6 weeks, or, you know, and actually it's been falling off. And I was lucky in that before that, I really hadn't thought much about my weight. I was fairly just kind of neutral about my body. And I remember thinking, the baby weight, like, what is this is there something I've got to lose? Like a particular, like they were saying, I've got to lose the baby weight. I've got to do this to get rid of the baby weight. And I just thought, but this is just my body now. Like, it's just different because I had a baby, but it's not like, why should I have to do something to make it go back to look like it's never had a baby? Like, that didn't make any sense to me. And yet, you know, I became more conscious of it, that it was everywhere. And we'd go to whatever, the little local toddler group, and you know, the person running it would really, you know, with a heart of gold, say, oh, we've actually just introduced, we're just doing healthy snacks for the mums now, so we're not doing biscuits anymore, we're doing, you know, whatever kind of fruit, and you just thought, that's lovely, but actually I could murder a biscuit. I've been up all night feeding my baby. What I want is a chocolate biscuit and a chat, and so these things, it's never meant with any malice. And actually, of course, new mums are always talking about wanting to lose weight or being conscious about how much weight they gained, because even the rhetoric from the NHS is around that. So, you know, you get told that, you know, breastfeeding will help you burn X number of calories a day, or it will earn you X, you know, treat that day. And you think, well, actually, if that's what's just constantly being bandied around, and it's in your, you know, your health visitor guide to, you know, the postnatal period or whatever, then there's only so, you know, you'd have to be the most body confident person in the world to be like, oh, that's all irrelevant to me, and I'm not even going to think about me. You know, the reality is that, and you know, the issue, of course, is that's not going to change anytime soon. You know, there is this assumption that women should somehow erase all evidence that they have just produced a whole new human. You know, and obviously we can choose to not engage with that, but it is challenging and it is in our faces. So I think, I can't quite remember what your question was now, to be honest, but it is a minefield, let's put it that way. It is a minefield. And so yes, I think that is a very vulnerable period, as you say, for people who maybe have never even thought about it before, as was the case for me. I'd been totally grand during pregnancy. I hadn't thought about the weight I would gain. This was with my first pregnancy. I just was really excited and happy, and it was only really, once I was thrown into that kind of lion's den of everybody talking about being good, losing the baby weight, that actually things really start to kick in.
And that, for me, when you say about, that sort of after the joy of baby being born, that's the bit that feels so heartbreaking for me, because many of the people I talk to in our community are saying, I just hope that having had an eating disorder in my past hasn't disadvantaged me when I want to conceive and have a baby. And, for so many of us, it's a big deal. And I've talked very openly about kind of that missed opportunity for me. And I think how heartbreaking that anybody could overcome an eating disorder, have a fully functioning body that enables them to fall pregnant, and then whether it's because of internalized stigma, whether it's historic thoughts and feelings, or whether it's that just diet culture of people around them or health visitor rhetoric, that then gets them questioning whether this body that bravely and wonderfully was able to give birth to this child now rapidly needs to change and see them return to an eating disorder in order to mean that they're back to a shape that they had been many moons ago. And by the way, in so doing, that kind of nutritional kind of, falling off a cliff is then going to mean that they don't get to enjoy those early days, weeks and months of being a mummy and enjoying the very world they looked forward to, because they're so busy being caught up in the illness.
Yeah, exactly. It's so cruel. It's such a cruel kind of aspect to it all, that actually, because and it's certainly not the case for everybody, but for many women who are kind of attempting recovery from an eating disorder, fertility will play a part, or hopes for the future. And of course, not everybody by any means, but for anybody who has kind of had that focus, that the idea that actually a recovered life might, include having a baby. As you say, if they've worked, and we know how hard recovery can be, and for them to have done all that work, and sort of come out the other side, and then as I say, just be thrown back into the lion's den of, and the reality is that postnatal period, your resilience and your kind of resources are low, because you're absolutely exhausted, like you're bone crushingly knackered for those first few weeks and months. And those first few weeks, in my experience, that feels like a bit of a bubble. You've got, so your partner might be off work with you. You might have people popping around with meals or like cakes, and it's all kind of cozy, and you're sitting feeding, and you're eating a slice of your Auntie Jean's lemon drizzle or whatever. And then, you're maybe 3 months in, and your partner's back at work, and everyone's kind of, they're still delighted for you, but there's not that kind of popping in on you all the time, and you've kind of maybe got a few of their meals still in the freezer, but you're kind of just at home with your little one, and you haven't slept properly for months. And actually at that point, it doesn't take much for thinking patterns to kind of, if you've had these really habitual thinking patterns around food and exercise, that kind of, when you're basically on autopilot, eat, sleep, repeat, those kind of, if those neural pathways are still, even if they're kind of dormant, it won't take much to kind of reignite them. The idea that, I don't know, that, you've ended up feeding your baby for 45 minutes and it's kind of nearly tea time, so you haven't really had a snack, and you think, oh, it's not worth it, I'll just, that actually those things, whilst not kind of no bad intention behind them, or no disordered intention behind them, they can really hide in plain sight and just become, again, a slight habit, which, as we know, can spiral quite rapidly.
Let's talk about some of the work we're doing then in terms of trying to make a difference in this space. We have been doing a lot of training for a variety of healthcare and midwifery professionals, haven't we, over recent months, helping them gain more of that insight, but also some kind of personal work with individuals and providing things like befriending support. So there's quite a lot going on, isn't there?
There is, it's kind of really snowballed in an exciting way. So just this last couple of days, Debbie and I have been kind of firming up details of some conferences that we're going to be speaking at, and every week there's more and more requests coming in from NHS trusts or forums or kind of midwife organisations, or just saying, actually, we'd love a bit of insight and understanding into this area, and just some kind of basic skills and clinical skills which will really help us to feel like we're giving women a chance. And actually, the reality is a lot of organisations are getting in touch saying, actually, it used to be the case that if a woman came through with an eating disorder, we'd just pass them on to eating disorder services. But now eating disorder services are so overstretched and underfunded that often they can't accommodate them. So then perinatal and maternity services are there, kind of holding these women who actually do need specialist eating disorder treatment but aren't able to access it. So it's teams really wanting to just make sure they can do their best for their patients, and which is brilliant. It's such a kind of humble, I don't know if that's the right word for it, but it's such a humble attitude that they're saying, actually, this is something we don't know enough about. And that idea that, I think, because what we offer is a combination of lived experience, but also, these key clinical skills, that seems to be really what organisations are responding to with really positive feedback. The idea that you've got this lived experience to really make it real for the professionals having the training, but at the same time, it's like, okay, so you had a really tough time of it, and that all sounds awful, and maybe your care wasn't the best, but how do we do it differently? And that's the vital part, I think, of what we deliver, is saying, okay, well, these are general things that we believe are helpful, or maybe helpful, or might really help you build a relationship of trust with the women you're working with, and it's sort of I think that's going very well. So there's a lot of organisations who are coming back and saying, look, this is brilliant, because we didn't really even have eating disorders on our radar, and now we're really keen to learn more, or to cascade this training to colleagues. And so it's that combination of lived experience and then clinical skills, and always Q&A sessions always end up with really rich discussions, because people inevitably say, oh, actually, I've got kind of a specific question, because I had a woman a few weeks ago, and she was worried about this, and I just thought, I don't know what to say, because I don't want to make it sound and so actually I think professionals really kind of appreciate that personal touch, that actual a living human. They get to actually ask their questions, they get to sort of understand the impact of these illnesses on pregnancy and vice versa. And so I think it's been really gratifying to feel that the work we're doing is both really needed and really appreciated. And I think that kind of alongside with we've kind of collaborated or worked with, or sort of shared resources with some really kind of prestigious organisations now, the Royal College of Psychiatrists, Royal College of Midwives, Institute of Health Visiting, and what they've all said is, look, this fills a really big gap, this is a really important need. So I think from my perspective, there's still plenty of work to do. I'm really keen to focus some resources on partners and any kind of older children, because I think that is an area, I know that my husband, I mean, it was just an absolute roller coaster for him, and there's very little, as I understand it, UK wide, there's very little support specific to partners of women during the perinatal period who may be struggling with eating disorders. So there's work to be done, and I think we'll continue to do it until things really feel like they've changed for the better.
And our befriending model is managing to help on a one-to-one level, isn't it? Being able to use our what was already in place as a befriending scheme, matching people with lived experience, but finding people who in this particular area have been through a pregnancy and experienced an eating disorder. So I think
absolutely,
that's something we'd like to really widen our befriender cohort, wouldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely, because having recently befriended somebody who was pregnant and befriended her through the pregnancy and through the birth stage, you get feedback saying it's just we just need someone to bounce our thoughts off, to be able to kind of empty what's in our head, all the kind of thoughts that feel really shameful and so disordered and so odd to anybody else's ears. It's being able to share that in a non-judgmental space with somebody who really gets it. And of course, as a befriender, your job isn't just to sort of let them, not let, but of course you want to offer that space for them to really splurge out anything that is kind of eating them up, but also then to kind of, I suppose, where you can, and kind of encourage self-compassion and maybe goal setting, and kind of actually saying, yeah, it's going to take, big changes and steps, but we're here with you. So yeah, I think for anybody listening who maybe has had a child or kind of been through pregnancy with an eating disorder, who thinks actually they might be able to offer an empathetic ear to somebody who is right in the thick of it now, we'd absolutely love to hear from you. Even if, you didn't necessarily experience your eating disorder during pregnancy, but you've kind of successfully juggled recovery and parent, or, I think, or kind of have, faced a kind of fertility journey, whatever that outcome, and an eating disorder recovery journey. I think, it's a really important area of our befriending that we'd love to really boost, because we hear from women all the time who sort of say, look, I'm pregnant and I thought I was well recovered. I'd suffered from an eating disorder in my teens, and here I am and I'm pregnant, and I just feel like I'm slightly slipping down a slope, which feels familiar, but I really don't want to. These women absolutely want to do their best by their family, by their unborn child. It's not a question of people sort of going, oh yeah, I'm decided to relapse. It's people really bravely trying to just notice the early signs and think, I'm going to protect myself and my baby here. So the more people we have who can kind of offer, kind of empathy and guidance and kind of honesty to these women, the more people will be helping. And so do, if you're listening and can think of anybody who might be up for that, then we'd really love to hear from you.
Yeah, I'd echo that, in looking for people with lived experience, and bearing in mind how many talks and opportunities we've got to be able to speak to professionals throughout the UK now. If that's something that you think, I've got a story, I want to share it, then in your first instance, get in touch with us, because the more we can build this network of people prepared to share that valuable story.
And it can be anonymous. There's no, it can be anonymous. It can be in any kind of context or format. If you just want to write an anonymous blog or anything, there's no pressure to kind of stand on a stage and talk to 100 doctors about your experience. It's it's just getting these voices heard is so important. So really, it's as we know, it's it takes a community to recover, and that's what we're trying to build here in this sort of perinatal mental health and eating disorder community is growing. And I think so. Obviously, it's Maternal Mental Health Awareness Week this week, and so we've got some exciting things happening with that, and blogs coming out to look out for, and we've worked with the Perinatal Mental Health Partnership, who kind of run the Awareness Week, to kind of deliver a video recording about some of the work we do, and about some guidance for healthcare professionals and things. So this is a really good week to, if you're thinking about getting involved, or thinking about, if you're a woman yourself who is thinking, this, I hadn't really expected to be feeling this at this time of life. You're maybe in the early stages of pregnancy and thinking, actually, I want to make sure I'm in a really good place, or you're trying to conceive, then this is a really good week to kind of, reach out and get in touch and open up to your professionals, and point, if you find that you're trying to kind of express concerns to a professional and maybe they're not quite getting it, then we're really happy to provide any resources or kind of help with these discussions. So I think please do know that you're not alone, and that we are here to kind of elevate your voice and to really try and improve support.
Well, I echo that completely. So yeah, if you are out there, you think you're going through it, or you feel that your story means that you could better support somebody else who is going or has been through it, then please do get in touch with us. As Abby says, you know, we don't have to kind of name you if in sharing your story, if that's not what you want. But the more you contribute and use this week as a momentum to do so, the more you contribute, the more it enables us to work alongside the professionals to create the kind of service and solution that is going to better support you and others like you in the future. And you know, as Abby rightly says, we're developing our service provision for this. You know, this is very, very new in what we've been doing already, but it's happened rapidly. And in the coming months, we do want to look more at how does this affect wider families? How do we better support spouses and partners, better support children in those where mum is experiencing an eating disorder, and looking more widely at sort of support group initiatives. So do get in touch, and as I say, the more you do so, the more we can help shape our approach and get the voices heard and get those that need to listen to what is required out there. And hopefully that, you know, in time that creates the kind of change that we all hope will happen for the greater good. Well, thank you very much for listening to this latest episode of the Wednesday's Child podcast. As we've said, this is Maternal Mental Health Awareness Week. Please use this as an opportunity to think about your own situation, think about what you've been through, think about the kind of conversations you could be having either as a professional or something that you are going through, or just to reach out, get hold of our community and share your story with us. As ever, the general email address is hello@wednesdayschild.co.uk. Thanks again, and we will see you in another episode really soon.